Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. The more I research, the clearer things seem to be. Also, when this globalism plan comes into focus, it seems like things are accelerating. Maybe the people planning this world enslavement and depopulation event are worried that we're waking up. So I've been making some interesting videos lately, I think. And I might want to say that since I began this in 2013, September 22nd, 2 days from now will be a 5-year anniversary of publishing videos on a couple series I've made, including dumping chemicals in the sky spraying, the New World Order media and press releases, live streaming events, Freemasonry and Satanism, and others, messages from Rick Miracle. So I've been at this for a while. 2005, I guess, is when I woke up, had a big 0 birthday, and I went to Costa Rica, and some foreigners at a tiki bar told me that they felt sorry for we Americans. We didn't know what was going on. Of course, I thought they were crazy. But I went back to Florida, did some research. They weren't crazy. Anyways, I thought I'd talk about a couple things before I read from the book again. 216 in my series, part 2 of the Vatican Assassins. Unbelievable material. But more supporting material, and I will be making more videos on the global warming hoax and the global world order. I started last Sunday and made 3 one-hour videos. I'm not finished with that string of videos on that title and line of thinking, because I have a lot of material. But anyways, I have a Nexus magazine here, March-April 2010, Climate Gate Chills, Man-Made Global Warming Theory, in 2010. So no matter how much evidence gets put out there that they're fabricating all this data, that they're controlling the weather, so it does look like reality, they just keep on going, and a lot of people are buying it. But here you go, Climate Gate, the man-made global warming hoax. 2010. I'll just read one paragraph because I am going to include this in another video of the global warming hoax and the global world order. Message from Rick Miracle. Man-made global warming has now been exposed as a deliberate lie constructed by some of the world's leading scientists, when on 17 November 2009, a hacker broke into a computer used by the University of East Anglia's Climate Research Unit, the CRU, where one of the world's 4 global temperature data sets is held, and then released a 61 megabyte zip file containing the 160 megabytes of climate change data on the internet. The results, per science as practiced in the 21st century, in the most shameful of lights, indeed controversial Australian journalist Andrew Bolt has labeled the hoax as the greatest in modern science. So they were fabricating the data. The email is confirmation that the evidence was altered in favor of man-made climate change and global warming. So they're using the global warming hoax and all those other things with man-made fires, I should say government-made fires, secret societies, to convince us all the planet is going haywire. We have an emergency situation on our hands. Houston, we have a problem. A clear and present danger. And that would be that some people are waking up to the hoax, because they're able to move forward with their plans for this global world order, because a lot of people refuse to wake up. They're buying the story hook, line, and sinker. Jesus was a myth, of course. It was all made up. So was Caesar and ancient Judea and King Solomon's temple. Heck, there was no King Solomon, was there? Or King David? Then what is all this Israel and President Donald Trump recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel all about, if none of that existed? Napoleon didn't exist. I didn't see him. Did you see him? Alexander the Great. Genghis Khan didn't ravage all of the Orient and the Eastern European countries and murder and slaughter everybody. It was all a made-up rumor. Do you believe that? Or do you believe Zachariah Stitchens, who happens to be a Jewish man, who tells us he interprets the Sumerian tablets, and it's the Anunnaki who made us in a laboratory? And they're coming back. And the Palladians, I guess, are coming with them. And the Andromedans, and the gray aliens, and the reptilians, and the Avrians, the oranges, the orbs, and so many other beings, Nancy Leader and the Zetas. When are we going to wake up and see all this for what it is? A grand hoax. Let me show some more information to show that that is the truth. I've been reading this book. The Two Babylons. So Babylon's in the Bible. They were trying to build a tower to reach God, to reach the heavens. The Tower of Babel. Apparently, God was upset with that, destroyed the people's area, Babylon, dispersed the people, and made them speak different languages. Babel. Babylon. Everybody couldn't understand each other. It was all babbling. Babylon. The two Babylons. So apparently in the end times there's supposed to be a second Babylon, the whore of Babylon. And here it seems like they're trying to say it's Rome. And what is in Rome? That would be the Vatican. So who's in charge? The Vatican? Who controls the Vatican? The Illuminati, the banksters? And wasn't it the Illuminati that financed the Zionist Jewish people and negotiated with governments during World War I and World War II? And owns all that property over there in Israel? Owns all the banking systems all over the world? Took over the Bank of England. Federal Reserve they created in the United States. And Germany. And all the countries. Very first video I made in this series, Book Review 1, was on this book. The Freemasonic Holy Bible. And I'm going to do an update on this on the 22nd, my 5-year anniversary. Because now that I look at these pictures, I know a lot more now than I did then. So I don't even probably know what I know. President John Quincy Adams wrote this book, ex-president, Letters on Freemasonry. Back then, early days of the United States, there were two political parties, the Freemasonic Party and the Anti-Freemasonic Party. The Anti-Freemasonic Party was the Christians, I guess Catholics, who were battling the Masonic Protestants. Again, they're playing two forces off each other when they're both actually controlled by the same puppet master. They're both into Satanism, Luciferianism. I have the information. That's why it boggles our minds. We get a little dizzy and confused when we think about the game they're playing, the Hegelian dialectic, the old divide and conquer. They're in it for the long run. They get to finance and support both sides and make money coming and going, no matter who wins or loses. They're on the winning side. They're on both sides. And when they do win a war or a revolution, the winning side promises to pay for all the expenses from the winning side and losing side. And guess who pays for all of that? That would be the people who are taxed. And I've been going over this book, Proofs of a Conspiracy. And so I look up material in this book. I don't want to just believe what I'm telling you. I keep researching. I have a whole pile of papers here I need to make a video on right away. The title of this document was, you're not going to believe this, The Synagogue of Satan. So the Synagogue of Satan, and I did look it up in the Bible this morning, but in Revelation 2-9, I keep saying Revelation 9, but it's 2-9, the last book in your Bible, go read it. And I guess it's God who's saying, I know who you are, Jews who call yourselves Jews, but are not. Ye are of the synagogue of Satan. My question is, do you believe the Bible has the truth in it? If the Bible has the truth in it, it clearly tells us who we're dealing with. He says to the Jews, not all Jews, Jews who call yourselves Jews but are not. I know who you are, of the synagogue of Satan. I might be missing it a little bit, but you can go look it up in the last book of the Bible, Revelation 2-9, and read the information before that and after that. I've been doing that. I will be making a video soon on Revelation. I just wasn't prepared. I didn't think I knew enough to be able to kind of make sense of it. But once you start to learn more about the truth, I think you can make sense of it. I've been reading this book, The History of the Marranos. Old book. Published in 1974, 4th edition, so I don't know when it was originally published. So apparently in Spain, during the 1500s, early 1500s, late 1489 or something, there were problems because of something called the Jewish religion they were practicing. So whatever it is in this religion that they're practicing was causing problems. And I have read from a few other very intelligent, smart people who analyze things a lot better than I do or you do, people who live for this kind of stuff. They said, wait a minute. Whether you're in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, the Orient, America, Ulysses Grant, the general banishing the Jews from the Tennessee territories, no matter where you go, east, west, south, north, the Jews had problems. So at all those different places with different kinds of cultures and different kinds of religions, there's only one answer. Who is the culprit causing the problems? It isn't all these other places. And I'll be sharing that information with the writers who said that. Some famous people. Professors, etc. And it makes sense. 2,000, 3,000 years, these people having problems, banishment, exiling, pogroms, police restrictions on what they can and can't do. And even in many cases, the straw that broke the camel's back was child sacrifice accusations. Ritual murder. This would all be Satanism. As hard as it is for people to grasp that idea, but they've convinced everything that none of this is real. There's no devil. There's no invisible entities. evil spirits, demons, fallen angels. No! There's Anunnaki, reptilians, gray aliens, Andromedans, Palladians, avians, Galactic Federation, a huge spaceship, maybe 2 of them, miles long, waiting in orbit to come save us from the evil cabal. Who's the cabal? That would be the banksters and mystery school organizations, temples, and lodges that even President John Kennedy warned us about. And he was soon assassinated right after that. Another book I've been reading lately is the Zohar. Amazing information. I have to make a video on this. The Jewish Bible, the Torah, the Zohar, the Talmud, the Midrash. Did you ever want to study the Jewish religion? Amazing material. Kind of reminds me of the Kabbalistic material. And during the past, in 1,000 years, 1,500 years, 500 years ago, the past 2,000 years, wherever the Jewish people were going, practicing the Kabbalah, many times they were accused of sorcery, which is witchcraft, which I would equate with Satanism. So when I read this, I will be careful and try not to disparage what's in here, insulting anybody. I will read it plain and simple and let other people decide whether it's what we want as a world religion, which I believe is coming whether we like it or not, seeing that they passed the Noahide laws. Some kind of laws from Moses. But the way I understand it, many Jews believe the Old Testament still applies to them. The New Testament doesn't apply to them because they have denied Jesus. The New Testament applies to the rest of us. And many Jews are offended by Jesus and the cross because of the accusation that they crucified him. So all this has to be changed. The memory of mankind has to be changed. This history and memory needs to disappear forever from the minds of mankind. What will they do to obtain that goal so that nobody can remember history? What's in this book? Alright, now I'm going to read from the Vatican Assassins again, and I picked a point in the middle of this book. That's just too crazy to believe. But I like to read exactly from the pages, and even in this book in the beginning it gives permission to do this. So I suppose the author of this book wanted this information out there. And one of my commenters said that they thought I should continue reading the Jewish Revolution book I'd gone over. I'll go over that book again, and that they thought that this book was a words. You miss my mind sometimes. Distraction. Misrepresentation. So let me read a little bit from it, starting on page 260. So it starts out here with the American Association. On April 28, 1927, at the special request of the Holy Father, Pope Pius XI, whose confessors were Jesuit Alisarde and Ciberano, the Supreme Council of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta granted a constitution charter creating the American chapter of the Knights of the Sovereign Military Order of the Malta. So the Pope has his own personal confessors. I guess he has to confess everything to them. They kind of control everything he does. Just like I grew up Catholic, we're supposed to go to a confessional and say everything to the priest, confess everything, when actually the Bible says we're supposed to confess it to the priest, and the priest is supposed to confess back to us all the things that they have done or he has done. Everybody's supposed to confess to each other. It's not supposed to be a one-sided thing. But apparently, they do that so that they can get the goods on people, know what they have done, even blackmail and use them. This is more insidious than people can imagine, according to the reading that I've been doing. Recalling previous chapters, the Knights of Malta expelled the Jesuits from their island of Malta in 1768. So with all these organizations, Freemasons, Illuminati, Rosicrucian, Theophist Society, Zionist groups, and Kabbalistic groups, they all, the Vatican, the leaders of the different countries, they pretend to play a game where they all fight each other at our expense. Divide and conquer. It's a relentless thing they do, so most people don't know whose side to choose, and people usually pick sides like the war between the North and the South United States, where the North United States citizens were killing the Southern United States citizens. How crazy was that? But it was all planned. The outside forces had a purpose. And what a better way to fleece people and take fortunes from families and people who have worked hard. Recalling previous chapters, the Knights of Malta expelled the Jesuits from their island of Malta in 1768. So Napoleon the Freemason, with his French fleet, was used by the Jesuits to return the insult. So the Jesuits were controlling the Freemasons and to attacking the Knights of Malta's island because they were expelled, driving the Knights from Malta, absorbing their weapons and treasures 30 years later. The order never forgives or forgets. So the Jesuit order never forgives or forgets. And to where would these ancient crusaders go? The knights sought and received protection from the Russian Tsar Paul I, having designated himself as their Grand Master, and stayed in his imperial palace from 1798 onward, about the beginning of 1800. It just so happened that on March 7th, 1801, the Polish Jesuit Victor General Franciscus Xavier Caron also appeared in Russia. For it was in 1801 that the suppressed company of Jesuits was given legal existence and permission to reside in that heretic nation by Pope Pius VII. What reason could justify the secret rendezvous? The Knights of Malta and the Jesuit order had mutual interest. So that might be one way to get into the Russian kingdom and in bed with the Russian Tsar, who might be hating the Jesuits, is to have a pretended situation that you were enemies of the Jesuits, the Knights of Malta. As I'm reading here, because later on the Jesuits are moving into Russia also. You have to use a discerning mind when you go over this stuff and try to get the big picture, i.e., it's largely deception. They both wanted to take Jerusalem away from the Muslims. Wow, 1801 in this book, page 260. They both wanted to take Jerusalem away from the Muslims and rebuild Solomon's temple. Vatican Assassins. The strategies, the plots, the things they've done. At our expense, we the people. And here we have President Donald Trump, 220 years later, saying that the U.S. recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. They've accomplished their aim. How do you think they feel when they control our politicians, our money system, our health system, our education system? our military, all the advanced technological weapons, the media, the newspapers, everything they control. And if you know what they've done in the past, World War I, World War II, French Revolution, 9/11, all the destruction in the Middle East, killing the American Indians, Central America, South America, 60, 80, 90, 100 million natives killed in the 1900s, Africa, 100 million plus or minus people killed there, Russia after World War I when they invaded that country to get revenge, as it says right here. The order never forgives or forgets. They killed 100 million Christians and other good people and destroyed the Christian churches, but not the Jewish temples. 25 million admitted in an Israeli popular newspaper. But there are some papers written by people who research these things, smarter people than me. And even on rents.com, I think they have it at 100 million people after World War I. And weirdly enough, strangely enough, after World War II, all the Germans that surrendered, they didn't want them to be taken prisoner and set free and to go home to their families. Apparently, at the behest of the Morgenthau Plan and Eisenhower, they were slaughtered. Put in huge, miles-long fenced-in areas and not given food and water. It was horrific. And when they went crazy and ran for the fence or something, they were machine gunned down. This should be alarming to people because apparently this is what's coming to our world. They did not do all this for 250, 300 years for nothing. I was listening to Deborah Tavares again, where they're weaponizing water and everything else, saying there's a shortage, making laws you can't use your hose or plant a garden, using drones to spy on people, trying to cause all kinds of devastation with weather warfare and get people away from the waterfronts in California, Texas, Florida, North Carolina. HARP transmitters, sending out huge blast of energy into the sky, bouncing off the ionosphere over any city, any area they want. Directed energy weapons, blast weapons, AI, artificial intelligence, wireless systems, cell phone towers, and they've been studying the frequencies that can affect our minds and our bodies for the past 100 years. MK Ultra, MH Chaos, Project Montauk, Project Paperclip, and so many others. So back 250 years ago, they both wanted to take Jerusalem away from the Muslims and rebuild the Solomon's Temple for the Pope. So it does appear the Vatican is in control of these people. Maybe there have been some good popes in the past, or in the past maybe some of the popes of the church had good intentions. So having been humbled by the Jesuits with Napoleon, they evidently agreed to be subordinate to the Jesuit general. The knight would never be expelled from Russia. The knights would never be expelled from Russia, unlike the Jesuit order. By 1878, the Jesuit-trained Pope Leo XIII gave the Grand Master of the Knights of Malta the status of a cardinal. This act formally subordinated these warriors to the Pope, and now, infallible Pope under Jesuit control. And of course now with Francis, with the other popes stepping down, unprecedented by the way, the Black Pope, the Jesuit Francis, is now in charge. And the Black Pope, the Jesuits, were the strong arm, the assassins for the church. Do you suppose in his reign, his rulership as Pope right now, we should expect something huge to happen? By 1927, the American branch of the Knights of Malta was established at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. One of the original 13 founding members was John Rescobb, the chairman of the board for General Motors, and a major financier of the Democratic Party. In 1930s, these criminals, including Joseph P. Kennedy, President John Kennedy's father, sought to create martial law in America by making FDR a Shriner Freemasons. Apparently the Shriners are the evilest form of the Freemasons. When they rise up and they get elected to the 33rd degree, you can't ask for it. They have to nominate you. They have to be sure of who you are, and you get to be a Shriner driving around in those little cars and having a circus-type atmosphere, getting everybody to laugh and think it's funny. Look at the symbols. Go look up some more information on it. Don't believe me. So FDR was a Shriner Freemason, a fascist, absolute dictator. So they wanted to bring the United States into martial law back then. They've been working at this for quite a while. Well, regrettably, I can't read all this book. Big, thick book. But I can read enough of it so you can get the gist of what's in it. I'll be reading this book for a while, like I do a lot of my books. I just rotate through them and get more material and more material. The first 10 years I was reading the books from cover to cover. But then it started to be repetitious on all the different famous authors and the information. So I pre-read what I make videos on and peruse the book and try to find something that I think is important. Some of these books I haven't read everything, but I have it all marked in the front of the book what I read, and then I go back and I continue to read. And when I find things that are mistakes, I say so. But so far, most of these books written by well-known authors are pretty clear in their intent. And like I've said before, 50% of them are trying to deceive us into this new age material and this anti-Christian belief and the pro-globalism, new age, and promoting hatred for Christians and the hatred for Mexicans or hatred for black people or hatred for Arabs and Muslims and Russians and Chinese, and somebody's just trying to create huge problems. And the other 50% of the books, I'm not quite sure the percentage that I have that are which way, but 50-50 seems fair enough to begin with. But they're trying to warn us. Eustace Mullins, William Cooper, Beware a Pale Horse, David Icke. So, and I know the most insidious form of deception is throwing a lot of truth in there and then slipping in some deception and lies. So some of these people are accused of that. So the one person, I remember the word now, that on the commenter said this particular book is misinformation. It was only appropriate as FDR's alter ego, an advisor and speechwriter, was a Jesuit of the short robe, a secret lay Jesuit, and a member of the General's Council of Foreign Relations, the dirty Harry Hopkins. But the plot failed as a hero and two-time Medal of Honor recipient exposed the conspiracy. He was General Smedley Butler of the United States Marine Corps. I believe I have the book by him. I need to read that. So he stopped them from creating martial law way back then. Thank you, General Smedley Butler of the United States Marine Corps. May we pause and thank God for so great and courageous a man who he used to temporarily deliver us Americans. So God he used to temporarily deliver us Americans from the fascist bloodbath overseen by the Archbishop of New York. It says in this book, Dear Truth Seeker, the Knights and the Jesuits then and now work together. This may seem irrelevant, but it is important for you to understand this connection. As we shall see, the Knights financed Lenin and Hitler from Wall Street, also using their Federal Reserve Bank headed by the Masonic Jew and Council of Foreign Relations CFR member Paul Warburg. So from what I know of all my research, I can actually expand on this statement. The Knights, the Freemasons, the Jesuits, the Illuminati, the Zionists, the Satanists, the Kabbalists, the New Age Theosophists are all working together. And many other secret societies, Rosicrucians, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Council of Foreign Relations, Bohemian Grove, Bilderberger groups, and so many organizations on the planet apparently into a satanic cult. The Knights negotiated the Concordant, the Papal Treaty, between the Pope and Hitler in the person of Franz von Papen. The Knights, as American ambassadors, coordinated Roosevelt with Churchill and Pius XII, the Pope, using John P. Kennedy, and Miriam C. Taylor, another CFR member. CFR. They also helped top Nazis to escape to North and South America after World War II, using William J. Donovan, James J. Angleton, and William J. Casey, and Argentinian President Juan D. Perón. So that would have been Operation Paperclip. All those scientists developing all those weapons and studying how the human body works by torturing so many people. These mystery school organizations, the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, the Zionists, the Kabbalists, all these organizations, the banksters, they wanted that technology and that research to continue so they could use it to bring about the global world order. What they're doing now, and all those advanced technologies, they seem to be controlling our weather and causing a lot of destruction with fires and earthquakes and other things on planet Earth, biological weapons, birds dying, and all kinds of hideous, sinister activities. We seem to be under a relentless attack. A lot of people on YouTube are saying all these things from different points of view. So don't believe me. Go listen to Dane Wigington, Alex Jones, Deborah Travaris, Dave Hodges. So many people on there. There's an unlimited amount of these people. And they're all kind of saying the same thing if you pay attention. And a lot of them are trying to make us believe that Planet X and Nibiru and the Anunnaki and the Palladians and the Zadans and the Andromedans and the Avians and the Greys and the Reptilians are coming here to take out the cabal and save the human race. In America, the Knights, with their Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, which later became the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, were behind the Pentagon's Operation Paperclip. So they grabbed all those scientists and leaders in Germany and brought them back here and continued the programs in remote cities and locations like Area 51. It isn't any wonder that people have spotted these flying saucers and triangle-shaped craft and all that. A lot of that stuff the Hitler scientists had developed, and apparently they were working in some kind of psychic research, Vril Society, Thule Society, gaining this information from some unknown sources, like Nikola Tesla said he was getting it in visions and dreams and hearing things. He said he wasn't the genius we thought he was having all this stuff delivered to him. Like a lot of people who are channelers and psychics and mediums and prophets of the past. This is nothing new. Publicly exposed in 1984, Operation Paperclip, moving the Jesuit general's Third Reich across the Atlantic. So the Jesuits were in charge in Germany, and the Jesuits were in charge of the United States. And they control the Vatican. The Illuminati controls the Vatican, the finances, and the Illuminati financed the State of Israel and negotiated with governments to bring it about for Zionism. And President Donald Trump recognizes Israel as the capital, recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, with his face on a coin overlaid with King Cyrus, the last king who helped bring about the Second Temple. You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure this out. Over 2,000 top Nazis and scientists were illegally secreted into the United States, including the SS Major Werner von Braun. Many were placed in top-secret military installation in Tonopah, Nevada, known as Area 51. The perfection of the Nazis' anti-gravity aircraft, flying saucers made of Pyrex with a mirrored finish, by Corning Incorporated, General Electric Company, and Lockheed Martin, all three corporations being representative on the Council of Foreign Relations. So many of these corporations, even if you look at their logos with the sun god and other symbols, 666, Google, all the all-seeing eye symbols, TV stations. Again, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to put this together. Just use the brain. Was to be completed there, among other secret light electromagnetic technologies. Secret light electromagnetic technologies. That's the key. And of course, with them bringing us all these 5G cell phone towers every few miles everywhere we live, beside the roads, and also secretly putting them around your town, church towers, trees, disguising them in your home, in your phone, in your iPad, in your car, probably refrigerator, in your power meter, and apparently in Ireland, in water meters. Everything is going to be controlled. Artificial intelligence, a beast computer, and then spying on anybody who breaks the law. We are all going to be criminals because nobody will be able to avoid breaking a law. Operation Paperclip was overseen by America's most powerful Knight of Malta, J. Peter Grace. Grace was subject to the Jesuit-trained Archbishop Spellman, as the American headquarters for the Knights was and is St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. Years later, the Knights would oversee another clandestine event known as Operation Mongoose. Mongoose, like Hitler's Operation Barbarossa, was a Jewish-controlled fascist crusade, betrayed by high-ranking intelligence officers who were Knights of Malta loyal to the Jesuit general. The result of the Bay of Pigs. So Operation Mongoose, as they were going to try to have an attack, pretended that it came from Cuba, but the whole thing failed. The result of the Bay of Pigs invasion, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the Operation Mongoose, all failures due to high treason, was the securing of Jesuit-trained Fidel Castro's absolute power. So they wanted Fidel Castro, who apparently was Jesuit-trained, to control Cuba for all these years, imagining the suffering of the people in that nation. So Fidel Castro's absolute power over the Roman Catholic Cuba, for Communist Cuba, is to serve as the order's staging base for a massive Sino-Soviet Muslim-Mexican invasion into the last of the Reformation's historically Protestant and Baptist Calvinist cultures. So is the Universal Church, Rome, the Catholics, bent on destroying Protestant United States along with the Baptists? The South. So would this be part of the South in the United States? At the time of the Bay of Pigs invasion, the director of the CIA was Alan Dulles. And remember, when I read this, I've read a lot of other books. I recognize the events, I recognize the names, I recognize it from books I read, magazines I've read. thousands and thousands of videos I've watched, press releases, discussions by other people. So like I said, a lot of this stuff I realize, but I get a little tidbit of new information every now and then that helps cement my thinking process, so I'm sure of what I'm talking about, as sure as you can be. Whose nephew, Avery Dulles, was an active participant in Vatican II and is presently a powerful Jesuit and cardinal at Fordham University in New York. Embarrassed, President Kennedy relieved Dulles of his command, Dulles, and appointed Knight of Malta John A. McCone as the agency's new director. The president then took steps to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces. This the Jesuits would never permit. The CIA was a necessary tool in preventing popular government from emerging around the world. So whenever they tried to create a decent, good government, those leaders are assassinated or demonized, and a lot of destruction follows, as you'll see in these pages. And if you review history, that's what happened. Apparently, John Kennedy had a change of heart, even though his father was involved in all of this. He had a change of heart and thought he could do the right thing. And he got assassinated for it. So they want to prevent popular governments from emerging around the world. It would betray the Hungarian Revolution in 1956 into the hands of the Russian Communist Army and the KGB, among other nefarious acts. The Jesuits' great deception, known as the Cold War, must continue. So they have to continue to have an enemy for America and the other countries that pick another enemy for them. You can see they're trying to portray Russia as our enemy, China as our enemy, invasion of migrants from Mexico and South America, Central America as our enemy, Arabs as our enemy, 911. In America, they want to divide the whites and the blacks, the rich and the poor, the gays and the straights, and all this other stuff. They're good at what they do, dividing people. Protestant America must be conquered from within, depriving her of the sacred Baptist liberties of the royal edicts known as the executive orders. And I am aware during the religious revolution when the Protestants were created and Martin Luther and the other religions, that a lot of the Jewish revolutionary peoples got involved and assisted them, because it's always a battle against each other. Maybe the Catholic Church will sometimes veer off a course what these people want, so they got to bring her down to her knees. And once they control her, they use her again. The same thing with the American politicians. And I've been hearing some horrific things about John McCain, apparently hugely involved in the savings and loan scandal and many other things. I need to look into these things. And apparently treated people who had hearings before Congress trying to get relatives freed from countries overseas. Apparently he was kind of nasty to those people and others, and was always screaming and shouting and causing a lot of trouble in Congress in Washington, D.C. He had quite a temper, they say. Then they say that he might have been arrested because of treasonous charges. These are the things people are discussing on YouTube videos. You know, you try to find the truth and do the best you can. But I was always kind of amazed as his attacks on the Republicans, because wait a minute, wasn't he a Republican candidate for president with Sarah Palin? Something didn't make sense. So they were playing these guys, again, playing us all for fools. So the Inquisition behind the Iron Curtain, known as communism, must continue. From 1917 to 1989, 100 million people must be tortured and murdered, and the Bible must be suppressed. Even in the 1920s and 1930s, the communists testified before Congress, you can look this up, that they were going to infiltrate and destroy Christianity from within. And the rest of the elements of our society, education, medical, economic, destroy it from within. Indeed, the difference between the Jesuits' Inquisition in Europe during World War II and the Jesuits' Communist Inquisition in Orthodox Russia and in the Buddhist Far East is none. The distant difference is none. Remember, with Communist Mao in China, what they killed there? 100 million Chinese? So the difference between that revolution in Communist China and the Jesuit communist and the Orthodox Russia with communists prevailing there for a while, there's no difference. Just like there isn't between the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Zionists, Rosicrucians, Kabbalists, all these societies I keep talking about, Jesuits, and of course a lot of lower level members would be very much angry with me and say, I'm not involved. You're crazy, Rick. Well, even these insiders in these organizations say all the lower level members don't know what's going on. Albert Pike said that. Many people say that. It's a recruiting ground. They get people in and they want to select people, hand select people. They use the Freemasons to hand select people for the Illuminati. That's in the material I've been reading, Proofs of a Conspiracy. Both inquisitions have been financed and supported by the Jesuit-controlled governments of the United States and Great Britain, to the shame and disgrace of both generally Protestant peoples. The Jesuits, refusing to permit President Kennedy to destroy their CIA, called upon the fanatical Cold Warrior Francis Cardinal Spellman. He in turn called upon the head of the American tongue of the Knights of Malta, J. Peter Grace. The plan was to assassinate President Kennedy in broad daylight as a warning to the heads of all nations should they dare to interfere with the Pope's international intelligence community. And who controls the Vatican? Let's get this clear. The Jesuits do. Who are the Jesuits? Formerly Jews, Moranos. I showed you the book here in the beginning of this video. In Spain. And they were causing problems in Spain with their religion. And apparently it was the Kabbalah, and many Kabbalists have been accused of sorcery. And what is sorcery? Witchcraft, Satanism. Enforcing his temporal power. So they have to keep each other in control. They need the Jesuits, they need the Vatican, they need the Illuminati, they need to control the banking systems. They need the Freemasonic lodges in every town. So you can make a phone call and say, we're going to have a gay rights protest parade today. Women's march parade today. Black Lives Matter parade today. White Lives Matter parade today. All they got to do is make a phone call. They have all these people in all these cities and all these communities. How do you think they all pop out in the woodwork on the same Friday night doing the same thing and on the news? It's organized. Meanwhile, the Jesuit-trained communist Cuba, dictator Castro, sent his ambassador to the United States of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta to this day. After Pope Pius VII was released from Napoleon's prison in 1814, he obediently restored the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. So the Vatican outlawed Freemasonry, then they restored that. They outlawed the Jesuits, then they restored that. And obviously with the Illuminati and the banksters, they had to do what they were told. Their money, their purse was controlled by the banksters. They controlled the politicians. They could have the country of Italy take down the Vatican. They did arrest the Pope. He got out of prison, Napoleon's prison, here in 1814. So you don't do what these people say. Even the Pope, he goes to prison. So he gets out of prison, and he restores the Society of Jesus with the papal bull, Sancta Dudo Annumian Ecclesiastium. I guess some Latin words, proclamated on August 7th of that year. The bull A bull is the strongest legal document a pope can issue. In that bull of restoration, the pope added, if any should again attempt to abolish it, the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, he would incur the indignation of Almighty God and the holy apostles, Peter and Paul. I'm not quite sure that God and the apostles, Peter and Paul, would really be indignant if they got rid of the Jesuits or the Illuminati or the Freemasons, who created the New Age magazine, or the Theophist Society, the forerunner of the New Age, who created the Lucifer magazine, or the Rosicrucians, or all these Zionist, Kabbalistic, utopian-seeking, global world order evil forces. Do you really think God wouldn't be indignant about that? Or Peter or Paul in the New Testament? It's amazing what these people say and do. As a result, in 1816, John Adams wrote Thomas and Jefferson about Pope Pius VII's reinstatement of Jesuits repressed by Pope Clement XIV. My history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written, but it is supported by unquestionable authorities, is very particular and very horrible. That would have been President John Adams writing to President Thomas Jefferson. Whether they were president at that time or later, I'm not quite sure here of the date. But he writes a letter, my history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written, but it is supported by unquestionable authorities. This is series 216, so I've looked at 250 books in my series Freemasonry and Satanism, over 550 videos on YouTube. So that's my source of my unquestionable authority. Studying for 14 years, going on 15 years, and seeing what I've seen, 2001, running my business as a business consultant and seeing how people behave, all kinds of people. And a lot of time it just made me sick. Even the people that I had employees, were causing me more grief than any of my customers did. Grown people, 50 years old, having to be babysat like children. It caused you to grab your chest and think you're going to have a heart attack. Screaming at a 50-year-old person, 45 years old. Their restoration is indeed, according to John Adams to Thomas Jefferson, their restoration is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, perfidy, despotism, death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits. If ever there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on earth and in hell, it is this Society of Loyola. And remember, I've gone over the material. These were Marranos that created the Society of Loyola, the Jesuits. And apparently when they went into that room, you can only imagine what was discussed. These people were in cahoots with the Illuminati, the banksters. A deal was made, and apparently they became the enforcers, the mafia, the assassins for the church. So the church didn't have to be threatened. Maybe they promised they would spend their eternity destroying the Protestants and the Baptists and all the other heretics. Maybe that's why they passed the law in the United States recently. The Noahide laws, sneaked it in while Congress was gone. Said it was a unanimous vote with only 5 or 6 people there. Anyways, the Noahide laws are, it's punishable by beheading if you commit heresy. And heresy can be worshiping an idol. And an idol could be Jesus or a statue or the cross, because they deny Jesus. You see where this is going? And that, of course, would be a satanic thing. Even Jesus, I started this video, told them back then, Revelation 2:9, I know who you are, Jews who call yourselves Jews but are not. You are from the synagogue of Satan. And most of the Jews in Israel today and the world and all these powerful organizations are not original DNA Hebrews. They are from Khazaria, up by Mongolia, and Russia, and Poland, and Germany. In 700 AD after Christ, they had a decision to make because they had the Islam Arabs on their east side and the Christians and all those on their west side, Rome and all that. And they were worried about being attacked, so finally they chose the Jewish religion because everybody wanted to deal with the Jews, and apparently the Jews said that they were God's chosen people. And these Khazarians were ruthless, barbarian people who even rented their armies out for other kings when they needed them. And they were neighbors and probably some kind of bloodline relatives to the Mongols with Genghis Khan, who were notorious for being vicious barbarians. And if you go look at some of the cities in that area, Mongolia now and the surrounding cities and countries, some amazing buildings and cities. It's almost like out of this world. So whoever's behind all this is actually operating in the background and has already built these amazing cities with all these crazy symbols. Stuff you don't know if you don't go look for it. When I saw some of these facilities and cities, I was gasping. I said, man, that's just like a sci-fi movie or something, another planet. But then I'm thinking where it's from, the history of these people. We haven't heard much about them throughout our history, but apparently people and people like these people have been controlling things from behind the scenes all along. On July 13th, 1886, Pope Leo the 13th issued a brief after enduring 3 days of severe illness, restoring all remaining privileges withheld by Pius XII upon the order's reestablishment in 1814 to do as they would please, unrestrained by any human authority, as no Pope or Grand Master of Knights of Malta has successfully challenged the power of the general of the Jesuits, known as the Black Pope. You can only imagine who that might be. Remember, Pope Francis was from Argentina and apparently a Jesuit. And why would they make him Pope? And if he is a Jesuit, that would make him the Black Pope. And why at this time would all these technological weapon systems and surveillance systems in place and all these other crazy things, climate change, plans for all the cities, action plans, and including the military, the education department, the Chamber of Commerce. I've gone over this. We're going to look at more of those documents. They've weaponized almost everything in our reality. We're all being metadata tagged. They know who we are. They know our propensities, our religion, what we buy, what we say, what we think. These computers analyze everything about us. They can predict things about us. Quite an amazing apparatus they put in place if you think about it. Scary too. Well, thank you for watching this video. I will be continuing more material from this book and other books, of course. Thank you for watching this video. Rick Miracle reporting.